Live, where news comes first. This is ABC-7 Extra.
Good evening. Welcome to ABC-7 Extra. I'm Maria Garcia. Glad you're joining us this Sunday night. Tragedy touched home this past week. The deadly shooting at the El Paso VA, one of those defining moments in life, those you remember where you were when you heard the news. On Tuesday, Jerry Serrato, an Army veteran who once worked at the VA clinic, made it through the security gates into the building with a gun and shot to death Dr. Timothy Fjordback, a psychologist who'd taken it upon himself to help those returning from war. The FBI investigating the community mourning and questioning how did this happen. Joining me tonight, Lieutenant Colonel Lee Peters, the Fort Bliss spokesman. The post handles the security entrance into the VA property, and Miguel Pedroza, union president for the local VA. You can email us your comments and your questions now to ABC7Extra at KVIA.com. You can also reach us at 915-496-1775. On Twitter, you can tweet me at MariaGABC7. Before our discussion begins, though, let's recap what happened.
They've got 3 command stations set up. There's 2 Border Patrol helicopters circling constantly with snipers. They're not letting anybody in or out.
Tuesday afternoon, people at the VA clinic parking lot call our newsroom describing the situation. That same night, the FBI begins to interview about 400 people, patients, staff, anyone who was around at the time of the shooting. Cristo Valverde, a 6-year veteran, was at the VA clinic for a routine appointment when a therapist pulled her to a room to hide, and then they heard the chaos.
And she was screaming at the top of her lungs, he had a gun. I don't think it has fully hit me yet. I know I had a nightmare last night and wasn't expecting that.
Soon we started learning more about the victim and the man who shot him. The victim, Dr. Timothy Fjordback, a psychologist with 33 years of experience and a specialist in mental and behavioral health. He left a successful private practice to work with soldiers returning home from war.
This was a tremendous thing that he had done in service of our veterans returning from the war zones.
The gunman, Jerry Serrato, served in the Army from 2006 to 2009, enlisting at the age of 40. He was medically discharged. Serrato worked as an intern at the El Paso VA for a short time. And after he was fired, Serrato's neighbor says he noticed a deep-seated anger in him.
He got into some problems with the doctors, the staff. You know, when he told me about this anger with the doctor, I felt that, he perhaps was taking it too much. He felt that he was responsible for him losing his job in the VA. I think if he'd have gotten the help he needed, maybe he wouldn't have done that.
Another question, could better security measures prevented the shooting?
Security on the installation has seriously gone down to where if you wanted to sneak anything on post, people already know how to do it.
This former guard says trained guards like him were recently fired and replaced by soldiers who are repurposed from other jobs, not military police.
I don't know how they could put personal safety with a dollar sign when now the installation is actually more vulnerable because we no longer have the security in place to deal with situations.
Fort Bliss handles security for entrance into the VA and Beaumont's property. A spokesman says the soldiers who now guard the gates go through certified training.
Gate guard who has anywhere from 6 months to 2 years experience as opposed to a soldier. It's a soldier doesn't have that experience level. But that being said, he has other peers and his immediate chain of command who can implement and assist those soldiers as needed.
The VA Secretary Robert McDonald, who visited El Paso days after the shooting, says the VA is increasing security measures.
We're reviewing security measures in all Veterans Affairs Department facilities. We do that frequently anyway.
Are you confident we can prevent these things from happening again at VA facilities?
We're working on it.
All right, joining me now, Lieutenant Colonel Lee Peters, the Fort Bliss spokesman, and Miguel Pedroza, union president for the local VA. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
There's a lot about this case that we don't know, but let's start with what we do know. We do know that here's a man who had made a documented threat before to Dr. Fjordback. Dr. Fjordback had said that this man, Mr. Serrato, had threatened him. It had been documented. And he managed to get through Fort Bliss security, through the VA doors, with a gun. That's what we do know. Those are the facts. How did that happen? Lieutenant Colonel Peters.
Well, as you're well aware, I mean, we provide security to, William Beaumont, to Fort Bliss, as well as the VA clinic, just the entrances to it. And when you come on to post, you are, expected to undergo certain types of inspections, but those are random inspections. You have to have, valid ID, driver's license, state issued, federal issued driver's license, or identification, vehicle registration, proof of insurance. And then, of course, you're also susceptible to vehicle and personnel inspections. So coming on to it, we don't know which gate he came through, and we don't know what time or if his vehicle is, inspected on. That's part of the investigation that's ongoing right now.
Right, but they do check IDs, and here's a man who, again, there was a documented threat against a VA employee. So what's the point of checking IDs if you're not going to flag someone who has threatened somebody who works at the VA?
Well, at this point in time, and I think the FBI just learned about that recently as part of their investigation, so I can't really talk about what they did. But what I can tell you is that, just like the Secretary of the VA said, we are always looking at our process, our procedure, and how we can make sure that we provide enhanced force protection both Fort Bliss and William Beaumont and the VA clinic.
Is there communication between the VA and between Beaumont and the security guards and the security forces, Fort Bliss security at the gate, where they give a list of people maybe that are threats or people who they consider could be dangerous on post? What is the communication between those two groups?
Well, it's really outside my lane to talk about because, one, my understanding of what happened, in 2012, 2013 happened off installation and happened in maybe the El Paso community. And so that then would be handled by local law enforcement. So if that information wasn't conveyed back, then it's something that we wouldn't be aware of. But that's pure speculation right now. Again, part of the investigation that's ongoing. A lot of people weren't aware of that until, I believe it was Wednesday when that information came out when the FBI uncovered it.
Right. The threat, the previous threat did appear to be made outside of post and outside of the VA, but we do know that they worked in the same clinic. Their interaction, we don't know. But according to the neighbor, Serrato was very hostile, was very angry at the doctor, would talk about him constantly, talk about the doctor constantly, and he had documented this threat. Do you feel safe at the VA, Mr. Pedroza?
First, let me start by saying that, unfortunately, Mr. Serrato was an ex-employee who didn't know the entrances to the facility. He also was aware of the checks at the gate being random. So he knew his way around the clinic, and it's unfortunate that he understood that he could carry a weapon into the VA undetected. In answer to your question about feeling safe at the VA, at this point, I would say that we do have a sense of safety for the employees now. It's unfortunate that this event had to occur in order for us to have an upgrade in the safety measures. Okay,
so he made it through the gate. But then he made it, like I said, through the building. And okay, he had the advantage of being a former employee. But there's somebody watching who's thinking, if there had just been metal detectors, he could have been stopped.
I agree. I've been employed at the VA for 16 years. And I remember when I first came on board, I asked, why aren't there metal detectors at the door? And this is 16 years ago. And I can personally say that I rearranged the furniture in my office to make sure that my back was not to the door. And this is 16 years ago. So, yes, you're correct. This could have been easily avoided had there been detectors.
Well, you think of, sort of the innocuous places where there are metal detectors, right? City Hall has metal detectors, and for good reason. Sure. Some public buildings should have metal detectors. But when you're dealing with mental health patients, it might be a good idea to put metal detectors. I mean, I think that's what a lot of people would be thinking.
I think you're correct.
We have a few tweets from Xavier Hall. He says, what happened at the VA is a clear reason why cuts to the installation and the VA cannot be to its security. current contract security company at VA does not carry weapons or non-lethal equipment. The VA shooting was a result of poor VA security, no one there to check IDs at the door, understaffed VA police force. We heard from a former guard in the opening piece who said that these guards who had been trained to man the gates were fired, and that now soldiers who just aren't trained that well are guarding the gates. How do you respond to those concerns?
Well, I'm a soldier, and one of our core fundamentals is force protection and security. I mean, that's the basis of what we are as soldiers. So I would have to say that every soldier is fully trained and qualified. Those who have been identified to serve as gate guards have actually been vetted and screened by their command and then put in place. In addition, they undergo a 40-hour comprehensive course that's been certified and accredited by the U.S. Army and by the United States Military Police School. And so every soldier who goes on there has been fully trained in what they need to do.
So there are these checks and these balances, but somehow the system failed.
Well, again, I mean, we're looking at, the process that we do and how we make Fort Bliss a safe and secure environment. And that is our number one priority. I mean, you can ask anybody. Our commander, his number one priority is make sure that we have a safe and secure environment for our soldiers, for our families, for our employees, and for our visitors who come there. And so we continually look at how can we better improve ourselves through force protection measures and through security. And we have been doing that since, back in the summer, shortly after General Twitty came on board. And we are continuing to enhance force protection measures on a daily basis. And you will see those upcoming soon as we're enhancing our actual gates to get on base through some construction measures, some other things.
Okay. Also, from Xavier, I've been a guard since 2010, and I was a part of the final class of the guards. Colonel, you made the comment that guards have 6 months to 2 years of experience. That was from a prior interview. That's false. The program has been in place since 2002. Was that just a random number that you thought about? Or?
Well, what I was trying to say was, we agree that the soldiers, like myself, I'm a former infantry guy, so I might be an infantry guy who's been put on the gate, so I'm not an actual security or an MP, because we use our MPs to go out and make patrols and to make the place safe and secure as they needed to. So I just picked a number saying, like, if you compare a soldier to a guard who's been on there for 6, 12, 24 months or greater, you can't compare that soldier to the experience level of what the guard did. Now, that being said, the soldiers have other peers. It's not just him on the gate. He has the accessibility of other peers on the gate, to the guard force, to rolling patrols, his chain of command, and other leadership from the Department of Emergency Services who can provide assistance as needed if something arises. So I'm not trying to downplay, our uniformed government employees. I was just trying to say that I could agree that our soldiers, while not as fully trained as the guards, still, have a lot of experience behind them. Remember, when we were in Iraq and Afghanistan, we did checkpoints and we did inspections on a daily basis, and the threat in Iraq and Afghanistan was a lot greater than it is here. That being said, our goal is still to provide a safe and secure environment.
Okay, we have to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about Dr. Fjordback. We're going to talk about the environment at the VA right now, so stay with us. We're also going to talk about veterans. So if you have a comment or a question, call us at 496-1775. Email us at ABC-7Xtra@KVIA.com. You can also tweet me at MariaGABC7 or with the hashtag ABC7Extra. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back, everyone. We're talking about the VA shooting that happened this week. Let's talk about Dr. Fjordback. We've heard a lot about him. You knew him personally. You worked on the same floor as him. Yes, tell us what he was like.
He was a very pleasant individual. He was always very pleasant to talk to, very warm, always had a nice greeting for you. I would walk out with him at the end of the day. We would share the same elevators, and always had a smile on his face. A very, very warm individual.
How are the employees at the VA coping with this? What's it like there to work there right now?
I'd say overall the feeling is one of family. We're united. Certainly the union has tried its best to put out a positive message as far as the tragic events that occurred, because Dr. Jorbach was a member. And right now, I'd say things are going as well as can be expected.
Did you know Mr. Serrato when he was a nursing intern at the VA?
I don't distinctly remember speaking to him, but I do know him on a casual basis. But to actually say that I knew him personally, no, ma'am, I did not.
Is there anything distinct about him that you remember?
At this point, no, I can't say, no.
Well, you know, the FBI taking the lead on the investigation, we did reach out to them to be on the program, but they declined. We don't know a lot about Serrato, though. His neighbor, though, says he suspects that he suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder. We don't know that. But according to his neighbor, he spoke angrily about an unspecified doctor at the VA, and it was sort of becoming obsessive. Do you think anything else could have been done to identify him as a threat?
It's hard to say. Of course, maybe in his treatment, there may have been clues to his behavior. Maybe the neighbor could have reached out to the VA doctors themselves and mentioned that he had a neighbor who was upset. I really don't know what else could have been done. It's unfortunate that Mr. Serrato acted out.
And you know, we don't know about Serrato's treatment, we don't know about his mental health condition, but this shooting does really make you reflect on veterans. I mean, it just has to. And a recent study, as we've been reporting by Congressman O'Rourke, shows more than a third, 36% of those veterans who tried to schedule an appointment with a mental health practitioner, with a psychologist, with a therapist, through the VA, just couldn't. They couldn't do it. There's clearly a problem there, and I think a lot of people watching would say that the government is failing veterans.
I can speak as a veteran myself. I get care at the VA facility, and I think you at some point you have to hold the veterans themselves accountable for their actions. You can't treat federal employees like second-class employees and go into the building and threaten the clerks who greet you or who are doing your appointments. Or
is there a lot of that?
I believe there is. Yes, ma'am. I believe there is on a daily basis. But unfortunately, because of the negative publicity that a certain congressman has brought to the VA, the mentality, in my opinion, has been that the veteran comes first, whatever the veteran wants. But you tend to forget the employees that are serving these veterans and the abuse they have to tolerate because the veteran is always right.
But the congressman has never attacked the employees of the VA, and I think he's even praised personally some employees there and the director before. I think he's saying that the system is not working for veterans. Do you have any thoughts on that, Colonel Peters?
It's clearly outside my lane, so I'll just allow. I think the VA has done a really good job, and as I will be a veteran and a retiree soon as well. I think they've done a good job, and most of the people that I talked to said that they get outstanding care through the medical system, whether it's the VA or if they get outsourced.
Okay, we have a call from one of our viewers. Hello there. What's your comment or your question?
My comment is Lieutenant Colonel Peters. You made a comment that guards only have 6 months to 2 years experience. The program has been in place since 2002. Where exactly are you getting your information? And I am a former guard on the installation. I'd just like to know where you're getting your information as far as guards' experience.
I think we touched on that already, but if you want to answer his question.
Yeah, it was the same thing too. Those were numbers that I just pulled out. What I was trying to say was, if you just take a guard in comparison to a soldier, a guard who does that on a daily basis, if he has anywhere from 6 to 12 to 24 months to 10 years to 15 years, he's got a little bit more of a knowledge base behind him than a soldier does. But all soldiers do go through a 40-hour course before they're put on the gates. They're just not like pulled out of their barracks and say, hey, you're going to go check ID cards and you're going to make this a safe and secure environment. So the number was just a number I just pulled out. Just the same thing as what I could say is like vehicles. We only check so many vehicles. Well, that was just a number that I pulled out. So it wasn't trying to say that, hey, guards only have 12 or 24 months.
Right.
It was just an example.
It was an example, right. Okay, we have Max from Central on the line. Hi, Max. What's your comment or your question?
I just want to let you people know that we live in a free society. We need to move forward without fear, and that our security force is doing its job on the gates. But freedom isn't free.
Okay, thank you so much. Max saying we have to live without fear. We have to take a break. When we come back, we're going to take more feedback from our viewers, more of your tweets and emails and phone calls. So stay with us. You're watching ABC-7 Extra, where news comes first. Welcome back to ABC-7 Extra. Some of your tweets here. Carlos says, focus on security misses the real problem. Veteran frustration with VA system that fails to adequately meet vet health care needs is the issue. And from Mario, he writes, will more guards or military staff be assigned to the VA? How will this affect the time it takes to be seen? I know there's been some changes at the gates, if you want to address that.
Right, so the biggest thing is both Fred Wilson, Alabama used to be all access gates, meaning that whether you were military or a retiree or a veteran or a civilian, you could enter, William Beaumont or the VA clinic through either of those two gates. Since Wednesday, we've actually changed that now, and we've made Alabama limited access gate, meaning only DoD cardholders, such as soldiers, family members, retirees, or VA staff employees can get through that gate, and then Fred Wilson remain an all access gate. Okay. We have an email from one of our viewers. He says, I am the Vice President for Fort Bliss IBPO-777. I would like to point out that soldiers only get a week of training. The only use of force that they have at the gates is a 9mm. They have no training at other levels of force and limited ramp inspections training because they don't want any government or VA personnel being stopped and checked. Guards at the gate used to be the first line of defense, not only for Fort Bliss, but for William Beaumont Army Medical Center, but for the VA as well. So 80% of the things coming on post, drugs and weapons, are coming from other soldiers and personnel that work on post. And that's from Philip Drumheller. What are your thoughts on that? Well, I agree with them. A week of training is a 40-hour week, and basically some of the tasks they undergo is, rules and regulations, how to search vehicles, how to search personnel, different levels of force that they're entitled to, making sure they know how to use their weapons. So everything he said, I agree with. And that's why our soldiers are there, and they're also working along with the gate, the actual, government employee uniformed guards. We are the first line of defense, but every soldier on our installation is a line of defense, just like everyone who's on the installation, whether you're a family member or you're a normal civilian at Freedom Crossing, Biggs Park, one of our museums. If you see something, say something.
One of the themes I think that keeps on surfacing from this emailer saying it's soldiers who are bringing in weapons that they're not supposed to, and then from the guard who we heard from, the former guard who we heard from in the opening piece, who says if people want to get stuff in, they already know how to cheat the system. We know obviously that the shooter in this case knew how to get a gun inside. So there seems to be this theme that if you want to somehow cheat the system and you have something dangerous to get on federal property, you can.
Well, the whole thing about doing random inspections, it means it's random, but everybody is random. It's not, we're just not saying, well, if you're a soldier, you're not going to get checked. That's not true at all. Right. Every vehicle who comes through is susceptible to be inspected. Your vehicle, your personnel, the contents inside your vehicle. We do ID card checks on them to make sure you have a valid, you're allowed to come on there. And shortly, as I've mentioned, part of our enhanced security measures, we'll be, introducing a new system that will basically, almost instantaneously, check your background before you even come on base.
It's funny that you mentioned that, because we just literally have this email, a lot of emails from viewers about security. There is a rapid gate system that is at every gate, which can instantly do background checks of any U.S. government IDs, but they are locked to only scan rapid gate IDs. Will you begin to use the rapid gate system to scan every ID entering the gate, since the technology is currently already there? Is that what you're referring to? Right, that's what we're talking about. So we basically have received that recently now. Everyone's going to be trained on it in the next few days, and it should be implemented, sometime this upcoming week. Okay. And then we have from Gary, the fault for long waiting times is not the provider's fault, it's the congressman's fault for not appropriating adequate funds, I should say, to hire more providers and increase the facility size to accommodate the increasing numbers of veterans coming from Afghanistan and Iraq. Shifting the blame on the El Paso VA on national TV has insulted the employees and caused decreased morale when it actually belongs to the shoulders of Congress. Congressman O'Rourke, we asked him to be here. He's out of town. He's in Washington, so he couldn't be here. But from speaking to him, he says that he has been trying to get those funds to El Paso, and he has been trying to get more providers to El Paso. And in fact, there's more positions for psychologists and for mental health practitioners, from what I understand, open. But it's hard to get people to come and work here.
This is true. Unfortunately, not everybody wants to move to El Paso and live here and work for the VA. I know there's difficulty in recruitment for staff. There's also difficulty in retention of staff. But that
Why do you think that is?
I believe morale plays a part in it. I believe the work environment plays a part of it. I believe the lack of advancement plays a part. You really have to want, in my opinion, to want to work for the Veterans Administration. I just feel that El Paso and maybe other parts of the country have better opportunities for providers.
And I think that's what's so tragic about this, is that we had, Dr. Fjordbach, who had given up a very successful private practice to work with veterans when there's just not a lot of people who want to do that.
Yes,
and they're desperately, desperately needed. The system obviously needs some...
It needs to be looked at, and of course we're hoping that there will be changes, and that the changes will come sooner rather than later.
Okay.
Thank
you. I'm sorry, they're telling me I have to wrap up. Thank you so much. We're out of time.
Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having us. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.